Welcome everyone to the March 2025 meeting of the Memphis Astronomical Society. Thank you for checking into our Zoom meeting. Good news, bad news. Next month we are actually going to meet in person back at Rhodes College, so look forward to seeing your smiling faces there. And in the meantime, we'll get on with tonight's meeting. So we have a QR code that you can scan to take you to web pages to join the Memphis Astronomical Society or to sign up to our email distribution. We don't, I say we don't. It depends on what your idea of bombarding is, but we try not to bombard you with too many emails. One a week on average. If there's observing sessions, you'll get those notices. But we don't just continuously hit you up with emails. We do have a sign up page where you can sign up to become a member if you enjoy what we do or want to support what we do for the community and support our mission of trying to share science and astronomy with the community. Then, so sign up, join. It's a good deal at twice the price. So, in my opinion. Let me see, next slide. All right, on our website, we have a calendar, and we try to keep it up to date. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of it these days. These colored objects are not stuff we enter. It's it's holidays and special times that we try to share with public. We got Uranus discovered on March 13th, 1781, and some other items of interest. We've got full moon. We've got the moon phases show up in purple, and then we have some of our observing sessions noted on here as well, including our third or fourth attempt at a possible Messier marathon toward the end of this month. So look forward to giving that a go. Let's hope the weather cooperates. We've got a couple of, March 1st, is come and gone, and I didn't make it to that one. We did a presentation on the 28th at Pinecrest and had a great turnout. We had about 80 people show up for that. March 1st, Mississippi River State Park. I think there was, I haven't seen a report from Milan yet, but I haven't been on email much this weekend. March 4th, tomorrow night, we've got an observing session at Jeter School. I think we probably have some volunteers signed up to help support that. March 7th, there's an event at Off the Wall Arts. It's a multimedia thing with some solar observing and then some, I'm not sure what else going on inside the gallery. It's an art gallery. So I think we're showing some MAS, some mass fits. Our astrophotography group is showing some photographs there. Might be some other activities. Check with Milan for more details on that. March 8th is another Hinton Park telescope mentoring event where we try to get there before sunset and invite new people that need help with their telescopes or just help with observing and get out there in a place that's not too far out of town. We're not completely dark sky, but we're out from under the bulk of the Memphis Light Dome. And and it's always a challenge getting volunteers to show up for our public events that we're doing to help support the community, not necessarily on our own observing sessions out at Astroflats, but when we're doing observing sessions elsewhere, we need to improve how we can communicate that and how we uh, are able to understand who's going to come and help with these events. And so I've decided to set up a separate email distribution for that. And we sent out an email notice to all the members to sign up for the President's Volunteers email distribution list. This is going to be an elite list of volunteers that come and help out with our programs. And we haven't figured out what it's going to be yet, but we're going to come up with some perks for the people that put in the extra effort to help with our community events. We'll see how that turns out. I threatened keys to a new car. Just keys. We've got no cars. So anyway, we have some new members, 6, I think. So Kenneth Johnson, welcome to the Memphis Astronomical Society. Thanks for signing up. Amelia Permenter joined 218, I think I have here. And then Leon Permenter, and I'm led to believe that these people don't even know each other, or at least they're unrelated. So
live in different cities.
We got Kapil Sir, joined 227, Liam Sizemore, 228, Brian Nason, 31. So I think that's it. Yeah, thank you guys for signing up and joining the Memphis Astronomical Society. We hope you get something out of it. We certainly appreciate what your contribution to helping us do what we do. So thank you. We have a newsletter. I've got to get an updated copy to go in my presentation here. That's our summer picnic. That's back in August. We had a picnic and got a lot of great pictures and candids and had a lot of fun. And we have a great newsletter. It's a good looking publication, got lots of great information in it. And it's well worth the dues you pay to be a member. This is a members only perk. We also have a new feature in our Meteorite newsletter. It's a classified ads section, buy, sell, or trade, whatever you got. We're also looking at some point in the not too distant future, hopefully having some kind of swap meet or something where we can get together and if you got something you want to trade or somebody's got something you want or whatever, we can work with that, see what we got going on. So if you got something for our Meteorite classified ads, send an email to me and we'll get it published. We have our own astrophotography group. The Masfits meet once a month as well and have a Zoom meeting. And this is where we have a lot of experienced astrophotographers that are excellent at a lot of the data processing and image processing that gets involved with astrophotography. And we've got people that are brand new to it and still working on taking pictures through the eyepiece with their cell phones. So this is that don't ever feel like you need to be intimidated or you're in the wrong place. The only stupid questions are the ones that go unasked. And everybody comes to these meetings with the idea of being able to share something they've learned with somebody else, no matter what level you're at. So join us in our Memphis Astrophotography group. We have swag. We have some pretty cool looking. We got a great looking logo. I got to tell you. I mean, we've had it for 30 something years, maybe longer than that. And no, I know we've had it longer than that. I've been a member for 30 something years. long before I got here. But it's a cool looking logo, and we've got it on a lot of stuff. So check out the Cafe Press and I think there's a link on our website. You can get there and get your Memphis Astro logo material. We don't get any money from this. Don't go buying it thinking we're gonna get money. It just we're not losing any money, which is what we used to do when we bought T-shirts and sold them. So get your MAS swag. All right, tonight is we have a presentation by Luke Schmidt from the Yerkes Observatory, and this is, if you don't know about the Yerkes Observatory, it's the home of the world's largest refractor telescope. I think they figured out not too long after this, you just couldn't successfully make lenses bigger than this. So without further ado and interruption on my part, I'm going to turn it over to Luke. So, Luke, I assume you need screen share. I'll stop sharing.
All right. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
That's perfect. Thanks.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you and share a lot of things that I've learned over the past 6 months. I just joined Yerkes back in last August. And so it's been a great time of sort of learning about the observatory, and hopefully I'll pass some of that along to you. Real briefly, before I get started with the observatory, I want to give you an introduction to myself. So I grew up on a dairy farm in Kansas, went to college there, and then went to grad school in New Mexico. So there on the left here, if you can see my mouse, I'm standing in one of the dishes of the VLA radio telescope. That was just a short drive away from campus. Next to it here, I'm the instrument I built for my dissertation, an aperture masking spectral imaging instrument for the Magdalena Ridge Observatory telescope. That actually the mirror on there was an extra mirror that they ended up not using for the Hubble Space Telescope. It sat in a warehouse for many years until it got turned into the Magdalena Ridge telescope. After that, I worked for a couple of years on the Magdalena Ridge Observatory Interferometer Project, which is still under construction today, but eventually it'll be an array of 10 telescopes, combining their light interferometrically to get extremely high resolution optical and near-infrared images. And from there, I moved to Texas A&M, where I was the instrument scientist for GMAX, which was the first light spectrograph for the Giant Magellan Telescope. Worked on that along with some other projects like ETSI, which is, I'm here on the right, holding the carbon fiber structure that houses the optics and everything, that has spent a lot of time on the McDonald Observatory 82-inch telescope. And it was specifically designed for measuring exoplanet atmospheres for transiting exoplanets. So my degree is in astrophysics, astronomy, but most of my work, I'm more of an engineer, so lots of optical design, mechanical design, things like that. And so that's the reason that I was hired at Yerkes. Got a lot of old telescopes, and all of them need things fixed from time to time. And so it's my job to keep them working, see how we can improve them, and hopefully have them working for many years to come. So I'm going to start with sort of some background on the observatory and how it came to be. It was conceived by George Ellery Hale. So he was a young astronomer. He was only, I think, 27 years old or so when he came up with this idea and started this project. And then went on after Yerkes to be involved with building what at the time were the largest telescopes in the world for, I think, at least three other telescopes. And so he's incredibly impactful in the field of astronomy. And he convinced Charles Yerkes, so Hale's up here in the corner, down here is Yerkes, and he was a businessman who had sort of a checkered past. He spent time in jail back east, kind of bounced around for a while, ended up in Chicago. Is famous for building the elevated train here in Chicago. Maybe did some shady things to get the land that he needed for that. And so his reputation was not great. And so Hale had the idea, I need money for an observatory. I want to build this big telescope. Who can I get to pay for it? And so he came to Yerkes and said, look, if you build this place, your name's going to be on it. We're going to do amazing things. Everybody will love you. All we just need is a little bit of cash to get us off the ground. And so he managed to convince Yerkes, and he put up all the money for that. And it was built here on the shores of Geneva Lake, not too far from Chicago. That was sort of one of the requirements that, we don't want this built off somewhere in the middle of nowhere, even though that maybe it would have been a better site, better weather. We want it close enough that, you can kind of show it off, I think. And so with funding from Yerkes, they worked with the architect Henry Ives Cobb to build what is a fantastic architectural masterpiece. If you come and visit, the entire building is covered in carvings. The inside is full of ornate decorations. Marble staircase up to the telescope. It's truly an amazing place to visit. The grounds were designed by the Frederick Law Olmsted firm. Also, you might know that name from designing Central Park in New York. So here you can see a sketch. You come off the main road, and there's this big oval with a big grassy lawn looking up at the observatory. And the entire site, I think, is about 50 acres. That is still mostly intact. There used to be quite a few more houses that were owned by the observatory, where all the astronomers would live. Most of those were sold off or torn down eventually, but we still do have two houses. The Morgan House, which was the house of Bill Morgan, who was the director of observatory for a while, and he's the astronomer who discovered the structure of the Milky Way, the spiral arms. And then we also have a house that's the Struve House, named after Otto Struve, who's another famous astronomer that worked at Yerkes for a number of years and also was involved at McDonald Observatory down in West Texas. So I've got a few pictures here sort of showing the process of how this building was built. It was built, in my mind, actually pretty quickly. I think it only took them a couple of years to come up with a design and actually do the construction. So for even today, I think that's an incredibly quick project. So here you can see it back when it was still kind of out. There aren't a lot of trees around there. And they've got the main structure of the building built. You can see the pier for the south smaller dome. The main dome is here, and then there's another dome that's kind of hidden back there, all yet to be installed. And so this is the south side here, looking down towards the lake. And once they had that main construction done, then they started putting up the dome. You can see that the safety standards in these pictures are a little bit different for the time than they are now. All you need is a couple of timbers with a few stakes nailed on to climb up here. So the dome is 90 feet in diameter. And you can see there's a few workers here for scale. So it's a pretty massive structure. There's another dome as they're putting on the outer skin. And I looked earlier today at some architectural drawings, and so to the top of the dome here is about 110 feet above ground level. So when you're up here on top of the dome, you're pretty high up. And you can also see here, they haven't got them covered up yet. These are essentially railroad car train wheels supporting the dome that roll on a steel rail, just like a train. The observatory was powered by DC electricity. For a long time, they had their own power plant. Now, some of that's been converted over, but we still have some of the original DC motors that work to move the elevated floor up and down, as well as rotate the dome. And Earlier this year, we did have a little bit of a scramble trying to find a part that had failed. Believe it or not, you can't go down to your local hardware store to pick up something that was installed more than 100 years ago. There you can see Alvin Clark and Carl London, who is his assistant. So Alvin Clark is a famous optician. He did a lot of the large lenses of the time. So there you can see one of the large lenses, 40 inches in diameter, and the lens cell here. And so these cutouts here actually, there's a shell that rotates around there, and so most of the time they're closed, but you can open it up at the time for airflow in between, but also so that you can get your hand in between to clean the lenses if you need to. Here you can see them building the massive pier. So there's a brick foundation that goes down, and then these sections of cast iron that go up on top. These beams here, you can see they're for the lower and upper catwalks. And those, I believe, are about 23 feet apart. So, you know, you're at least a good 40 or 50 feet up if you're on this upper level here compared down to the basement. Now they're putting up the mount. So you can see the right ascension drive. They're getting the deck axis mounted on there. Again, I can tell you, having been up on this catwalk, I'm 6'4", so I'm pretty tall, and this comes up right about knee level. So you kind of got to pay attention to not go tumbling over the edge. And I'm not sure I would be willing to climb up on top there like that without any sort of safety harness. They're certainly brave construction. And now you can see that the floor is installed, and it's an elevator floor. It's the world's largest elevator, I believe, or one of them. And so this whole floor, it's about 75 feet in diameter, and it runs on these big motors that raise and lower it 23 feet. It's a F-19 refractor, so the telescope tube is 63 feet long, and so, you know, pointing at zenith versus pointing at the horizon, that eyepiece height changes quite a bit. And so rather than climbing up on a rickety ladder, although we have one of those as well, the entire floor raises and lowers and lets you adjust to a comfortable height, so you don't have to be perched quite so precariously. And so you can see all of the rigging used to put the massive structure up here, the counterweights. And yeah, comparing to other pictures, you can see how the floor is much higher here. And down here, I think you can even see a little bit of clock drive that was used to originally track. They almost had it finished and then had a bit of a setback. So in May of the year before it was officially christened, I think in October, Professor Bernard and Ellerman had been observing. They had left the observatory, so at 6:43 a.m., I think another worker was outside and heard the crash. A cable wasn't tightened down, and that elevated floor crashed down, as you can see, caused a tremendous amount of damage. But thankfully, no one was hurt, and they came out and very quickly got replacement steel, took the old floor apart, and replaced it within a matter of weeks. And so, you know, what could have really gone wrong, thankfully, it was not damaged. For a while, they thought that, you know, once they got back together and were able to observe again, they were concerned about the lens on the telescope, of course. And there was some concern that there may be some sort of cracking because there was some extra diffraction that they were seeing, until they realized that actually a spider had built a big web inside the tube, and so there's a hatch on the side that you can climb into, and so a worker climbed in there, cleared the spider web, and thankfully the lens survived. But it did finally get finished. There it is, a picture from 1897, fully completed. You can see the floor is down at the lower level now. And in his address during the dedication, this is an excerpt from the speech that Hale gave. If I mistake not the signs of the times, the Yerkes Observatory can render no better service to both astronomy and physics and can contribute in such degree as its resources may allow toward strengthening the goodwill and common interest which are ever tending to draw astronomers and physicists into closer touch. And so that's, I think, really speaks to the role that Yerkes has played in the history of astrophysics. It was sort of the first time, and it's called the birthplace of modern astrophysics. For a long time, astronomy and physics had been fairly separate. And then, so this was a place where finally they were recognizing that they had a lot of things that would overlap, and physicists looking at molecular lines in a laboratory could look at those same molecular lines with a spectrograph in a star. And so that was sort of where Hale thought the Yerkes would play a role. And so there you can see some of the original telescope controls. So while they did have a drive and some electric motors to move it through the telescope, some of the things were still very manual. So each of these wheels either operated like a slow motion control or just locked and unlocked an axis, and it is possible to move the telescope manually. So even today, we can unlock the right ascension and deck axes, and you can grab onto it and pull it around, even though it's 5 tons. It's so perfectly balanced. Some of our smaller operators sometimes have to jump and hang off of it to get it going, but it is possible to just push it around, which is pretty amazing. And it has had some updates over the years, so these hand wheels are no longer on there, and this has been replaced with a traditional focuser and eyepiece. But it was used for many years with various instruments. You can see here there's a geared tooth here, so you can rotate. This is probably an early plate holder for a camera, and then various finder scopes and things like that. I'd also like to mention something that's sort of unique for the time is there's a long history of women at Yerkes, both in support roles, but also as astronomers getting advanced degrees. So some names that you might recognize: Mary Ross Calvert. She played a large role in doing a lot of the analysis work for a lot of glass plates for large surveys. Nancy Grace Roman, who you maybe know from NASA, the Nancy Grace Roman telescope is soon to be launched. And Harriet McWilliams Parsons, who was seen here in this photograph, along with Einstein, who's an astronomer that worked for many years, I believe, doing variable star and colors of stars, that kind of work. And this photograph is probably one of the most famous of Yerkes during Einstein's visit. And so I think a lot of people think that Einstein must have worked here. He spent a lot of time here. He did say, when he visited, this was during his first tour of the United States, and he said, I want to see Niagara Falls and go to Yerkes Observatory. So he did. He came here. He got a tour, but he was only at Yerkes for about 4 hours. So that's his level of involvement. But he did recognize its importance in the field of astrophysics. And here, mounted on the back, you can actually see one of the early spectrographs. And you can see some of those control wheels and the rods that go up here to lock or do the slow motion controls there. And so Yerkes, operated for many years, operated by the University of Chicago. Many famous astronomers came through, August Struve, Carl Sagan, a number of others. And so now I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the grounds and facilities that are at Yerkes today and in the past. And so here you can see a nice sort of overview of the observatory in winter. So the main dome here with the 40-inch refractor is here. This dome here houses a 41-inch reflecting telescope I'll show a picture of later, and this one holds a 24-inch reflecting telescope. And then the main floor here was libraries and offices and things of that nature. Down in the basement, there's a lot of lab space. That's where I am right now, in the basement of Yerkes, right down this window here. And the top floor here, with these circular windows, there's some libraries over here, and then all along here were dorms. This was a school of astrophysics, and so students would stay here and live on the top floor. So they called that the battleship because of the circular porthole windows. Here's a similar view, only during the spring. You can see the dome is open. I believe this was 13 feet wide. And later this summer, we're going to have a crew come out to help us evaluate a maintenance plan for this. You can see there's a ladder going up the side here. This is part of the renovation done in the 70s, where they basically put a new skin on the outside of the dome using what's called Terran plate, which I think is a lead-coated steel or something like that. And so it's held up pretty well, but there are a few little leaks. And a few years ago, it did actually get stuck open, and a storm was coming. And they had to kind of scramble with tarps to get things covered and have an emergency crane come in to help close it and then retension all the cables. And so we're trying to make plans to avoid that in the future. As I said, we're on the shores of Geneva Lake, so you can see surrounded by trees, the lake just through here. During the summer, you can't really see it, but in the winter, we're close enough that you can see the lake. So there's a lot of, historically, when the observatory was built and even today, a lot of the wealthy members of Chicago society have houses along the lake and come up here to visit, which I think was a lot of the appeal of the original location, a place to show it off. Here you can see the site back in 1921. And so a lot of things still survive. The big oval, the road through here on Parkhurst Avenue. We no longer have the road here, and some of these sidewalks are not here anymore. And some of these trees are significantly larger than they were back in 1921. We've got at least one oak tree on site that I believe is over 250 years old. So the landscape has always been an important part of Yerkes. So a few other telescopes that were here. So the Bruce telescope was an astrograph that was not terribly large. I think it was 7 to 10 inches in diameter. And it was actually several telescopes, each optimized for a slightly different field of view, taking large glass plates used for large surveys. I believe Bernard was the one who did a survey and found a lot of nebula in the Milky Way. Kenwood refractor is Hale's personal refractor that was at the Kenwood Observatory for many years, and then once Yerkes was built, he brought it here. And show you some more pictures of that in a little bit. And then the 2-foot telescope was a early reflecting telescope with a 2-foot mirror that is no longer at Yerkes. I believe it's in a museum, but it was in one of the smaller domes for many years. So here you can see the Kenwood mount, almost as it looks today. And so we've got another small building that was the student observatory that had a couple of small domes. And so it was sitting in there with the 7-inch Schmidt telescopes. There's a corrector lens up here and a primary mirror down here. And then there's a 2-inch square glass plate that you would put right about here. There's a little door on the other side that you would put that in there. And so it was repurposed there. Recently we moved it out. So now it's stored in the basement underneath the great refractor because the dome itself is being overtaken by squirrels and bats. And we wanted to get it out of there and prepare it for eventual restoration. So this is our 24-inch Böhler and Schmidt telescope. So this company, B&C, they made a lot of telescopes of this style that are in observatories all over the world, a lot down in South America or Kitt Peak, various places like that. So this was installed in the mid-60s, and we still use it today. It's fully computerized, can be used to observe remotely. We have a summer internship program that gets a lot of use out of it when the weather is clear. We also have we call it the 41-inch. So it's actually only 40 inches, but we have a 40-inch refractor, and then we have a 40-inch reflector. And so it's easier to say the 40 and the 41, because the mirror blank is actually 41 inches, just to avoid confusion. But it's a RC reflector. It was installed, I believe, in 1967. And if you've ever been to the McDonald Observatory, which has close ties with Yerkes, and for a while, the directors of Yerkes and McDonald Observatory were the same person. This is basically a half-size model of the 82-inch at McDonald. So you'll see a lot of similarities if you've been there before. It's needs a little bit of work. You can see this picture here. It used to have a big gear train that would drive everything off of AC current. But over the years that was replaced, and now it's direct drive off of the right ascension worm gear here. But this is a picture with that motor assembly taken off. There's a planetary gear reducer that had failed, and so this was in the midst of replacing that. But I'm happy to say that that has since been fixed and is now slewing and pointing without flipping current limits like it was before. So this telescope will probably be used for some, internship student research, but also more scientific by outside astronomers as well. And it actually has, there's an option, this hatch opens up, and you can put a Coudet mirror in there, which directs the light out to another mirror here in the right ascension axis, down this shaft, and then directed down a vacuum tube all the way down to the basement, where there's an optics lab and an optics table. Some of the very early experiments with adaptive optics were done here using this telescope. And another area that I like to spend a lot of time in is we have a fully functioning machine shop. Everything is fairly old. I think the newest machine is from the 70s or 80s. But even from the beginning, Hale recognized that, this is the place where we're going to be building instruments. And, there's some things you can buy off the shelf, but astronomy is, full of unique and one-off items. And so he recognized, we need a shop on site with people that can make stuff in the moment for us. And so here's a plate from his 1897 publication where he showed the machine shop, and you can see some of the various machines. And this is a picture that I took just a few months ago from a somewhat similar vantage. So you can see there's windows along here. Yeah, obviously the machines have been replaced, but it's been a machine shop there since 1897. And this is just to show that, I spend a lot of time poking around the various nooks and crannies of Yerkes, and you never really know what you're going to find. I was poking through a cabinet and came across this roll of toilet paper with a copyright date of 1967, completely wrapped up. And so you just never know what you're going to find in this place. And then another thing housed at Yerkes is our glass plate collection. So it's, I think, maybe the second largest glass plate collection in the world, certainly one of the largest. We have over 175,000 glass plates. We've got what we call the plate vault down at the end of the observatory opposite from the Great Refractor, just filled with these cabinets. And each one of these, they look like magazines or something like that. Each one of these is an envelope that has a glass plate in it. Many of them were taken here at McDonald or at Yerkes, but a lot of them at McDonald. We have some plates from Mount Wilson of all sizes. The smallest plates are just a few centimeters and are usually spectra. And then we have one plate that is unfortunately broken, but it was a solar eclipse plate that they went on an expedition and took the image, and it's on a plate that is 40 inches by 40 inches. And so we're actually in the process of getting that restored as much as we can. Thankfully, the part with the eclipse on it is actually in pretty good shape. So trying to get that stabilized and mounted so that we can display it again. But we have a dedicated team of volunteers that are working on cataloging things. And then summer students, as well as those of us on staff, were making plans to digitize at least a subset of these to make them available. Because, the one thing that is difficult to do in astronomy is get really long-term observations of things. And so, some of these plates taken 100 years ago are the only record of what that part of the sky looked like at that time. And so we get usually a couple of requests every month or so for a plate to be scanned in. We actually have a group coming in April from France that is wanting to look at some of our earlier plates, I think from the 50s of Uranus, because they are still updating basically orbits to provide better navigation for spacecraft today. So making those long-term measurements provide benefit even today. There's some great, interesting old equipment like this blink comparator. And so you have two plates taken at different times on either side. You look in the eyepiece here, and then they're backlit. And then you have a little lever down here that you flip between the two of them. And just like you would flip back and forth on your computer screen now, that's how you would compare and look for, a supernova or an asteroid or something like that. And it still works today. So if you come and take our director's behind the scenes tour, you'll be able to look through this. And so here's a few plates that I've run across since I've started working here, just to sort of show what's in the catalog. So this is a plate of Borelli's Comet taken in 1903. Here's an image of the sun from 1925. It's labeled Interesting Activity. I assume talking about the solar prominences here. Another series of solar prominence images. There's a lot of solar astronomy interest here at Yerkes. Hale developed the spectroheliograph and used it for many years here at Yerkes. And in between the two smaller domes, there's actually a roll-off observatory where they tried to have a solar observatory, but it ended up, the sun heated everything up too much. It had a corrugated tin enclosure and just made the seeing inside too unsteady. And so it ended up not working, and they built it in another building on the grounds, and eventually all that equipment made it out to Mount Wilson, where I think it's still today. Here's another one of NGC 253. And so that sort of gets us through to almost the present day, when in 2018, the University of Chicago decided, actually for the second time, to close Yerkes. So the first time was a few years earlier, I believe in 2005-ish. They sort of announced out of the blue, we're going to close it down, and it was maybe going to get sold to a developer, torn down, turned into condos. There was enough uproar that they decided not to do that. But then still sort of were tired of maintaining it, I guess. So 2018, they made an announcement saying, we still want to stop being in charge of Yerkes, but we're looking for proposals on what to do with it. Again, there was a chance that it would get purchased by a developer. We're lakefront prime property, so there's a lot of interest for development there, but there was a very dedicated group of local people that had grown up in the area, lived in the area a long time, that didn't want to see that happen. So they came together and formed the Yerkes Future Foundation. I think it was actually founded in 2018, and it took a couple of years, but in 2020, they officially transferred ownership of the observatory from University of Chicago to the Yerkes Future Foundation. And then there was a couple of years that the initial round of fundraising basically went to stabilizing the building. A lot of deferred maintenance we had to catch up on, basically water pouring into the walls. The main dome itself, they had, at some point, University of Chicago had painted the brickwork, which essentially sealed moisture inside. And so when they opened up the wall, the brick was just disintegrating, and there's actually standing water inside the wall. And so they had to basically open it up, dry it out, and sort of make some emergency repairs. But the repairs are ongoing. We have a number of, matched bricks on order that should be arriving fairly soon. That will replace some brickwork on the eastern side. Again, more work on the dome, the rest of the building. So it's very much a work in progress. But we're getting better. I don't know, we've only had one bat in the building this year so far, so it's getting more sealed up. But in 2022, we reopened for public tours. And so now, anytime people can come and walk around the grounds. But if you want to get in the building, we're not a very large staff. And so we have, tours at set times where you can come and see the inside of the building, see the Great Refractor, and a few other tours as well. And since we reopened, we've had about 100,000 visitors and hope to, welcome many more in the years to come. We recently started a student visitation program, and just in the last year had about 750 elementary through high school students. Our Exploring the Night Sky tour, that's the one that I think you guys might be most interested in. So that's most Friday and Saturday nights. We'll start up again here in, I think, April, maybe late March, through about November. Here in the middle of winter, the weather is just terrible, and nobody likes being in the dome when it's 2 degrees outside. So, but if you come on that tour, you can look through the Great Refractor. We limit it to about 12 people. And so you have plenty of time over the course of several hours to look at some real showcase objects through this historic refractor that is the largest refracting telescope in the world. The Space and Spaces tour, that's the main tour that sees the most people. That happens almost every day, mainly on the weekends. And that's where you can get a sort of a history and architecture tour, see the Great Refractor, look at a few glass plates, that kind of thing. And then the Director's Hidden Spaces tour, that takes you to all the nooks and crannies, down into the basement, up to the other telescopes, and really get a sense of what Yerkes is all about. So if you're ever in the area, I highly recommend giving us a visit. And part of this rebirth of Yerkes as the Yerkes Future Foundation is not being just about astronomy, but we're trying to become a place where it's astronomy and how that connects to things like art and music and nature. And so we have several art installations. The Time Will Tell sculpture by Ashley Zelinsky is on our grounds that you can come and see. There's a few weekends in December where an artist creates the world's tallest glass tree. They build this metal frame and spin it around, and they have a furnace that they put up here on this forklift, and take molten glass and basically drizzle it on there as it spins around. And so all this year we use blue glass. And so that spins around, and you can, I think it's $10 if you want to add glass to the tree yourself, or you can just come and enjoy. It's a really neat and interesting thing to experience. And then the final day, when they get it all complete, they have a big blown glass star that they lift up and put on top and light up. For music, we just got done with a S. Carey concert in the Rotunda. So S. Carey is a member of the may know the group, Bon Iver. He's a local Wisconsinite, and we talked him into giving us a concert here, about 75 people. We've hosted the Eighth Blackbird, which is a Grammy-winning musical group, I think based in Chicago. So they've given concerts here and then have workshops here as well. For education, as I said, we've got all the student visitors. We have a summer internship program. We'll welcome 3 student interns again this summer for a 9-week program. And we also have a lot of teacher development workshops led by Mallory Coleman, who's our education outreach astronomer. And here you can see some of the restored interior here. This is the reading room. And all the books on the shelves here are journals collected by the observatory over the years. And we also have open houses for the local community. So here's a 2024 eclipse event coming up, I think on the 22nd of March. We're having a Messier Marathon. We'll have, I think, a local astronomy group come and set up telescopes and allow the local community access as well. So what does the future hold? We have big plans for Yerkes. We have a lot more work to do with building and grounds restoration, eventual restoration of the Great Refractor. It still works, but there's some things that are showing their age, peeling paint and mechanical things that need refurbished. This year we plan on breaking ground on Play Space, which is an astronomy-themed playground on the grounds. We're working on plans for a larger event center. Right now, even though Yerkes is actually a pretty big building, the largest individual room we have to host events and speakers and things like that can only hold about 50 or 60 people. And so this space would be a space that we could have, a couple hundred people, hopefully. We hope to add an accessible observatory for public events. The building was built in a time when accessibility was not thought about very much. And so, in particular, our 2 smaller telescopes, you have to climb spiral staircases to get up to them. And so we want a place that people can use telescopes and have them be accessible to everyone. The grounds already have a lot of nature trails on them that people can come and walk on. And we hope to add more. We're going to be adding a boardwalk to some sections of that. Various speaker and film series, artists in residence, and then eventual robotic operations, both the 24 and 41, that students, graduate students, other researchers can apply for time and do observations when the weather is clear. And I think that's all I have. So hopefully I've given you a taste of what Yerkes was and is today. And hopefully you'll come and visit us.
Thank you very much, Luke. This was excellent. First thing I learned right off the bat was it's pronounced Jerkies and not Yerkes. So thanks for that. And open the floor up to questions. So anyone cares to ask a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away.
So, Luke, what are you working on now? What is your big project there?
Well, there's a few things. So one project is the 24 inch is long overdue for a mirror recoating, so I'm working on getting that scheduled. The Great Refractor has a focal length of just over 19 meters. And so as you can imagine, the typical eyepieces you can buy off the shelf are not well suited for that. So even like the eyepiece we use the most right now is a 55 millimeter Plössl, and that's still a magnification of several hundred. And the plate scale is such that something like Jupiter and Saturn look pretty phenomenal, but if you want to look at something like the Dumbbell Nebula, even in that 55 millimeter eyepiece, it basically fills the whole field of view, and so you don't get any contrast between the nebula and the sky. And so yeah, we're looking at getting some custom-made larger eyepieces that will be probably about 4 inches in diameter, barrels, maybe 125 millimeter focal length, which will hopefully really add to the wow factor of the viewing sessions. Continued restoration of the 41 inch to get it back in operation after replacing that drive component. And just general cleaning and sorting. We've got, closets and offices and things like that were just filled with things, old equipment, old research equipment that were just left here by the University of Chicago. So I spent a lot of time sort of sorting through things, trying to decide, what is something interesting to keep and what is something that, you only need so many boxes of parallel printer cables before you decide to get rid of some. So.
What do you anticipate the total investment in the restoration to cost?
So I think the initial fundraising was around 20 million, and we probably need maybe another 50 to do everything we'd like to do. That some of that includes, building, additional buildings, restoration on the grounds and the buildings and the telescope restoration, things of that nature. And a lot of that is also building up an endowment to keep us operating. We make some money off of tours and things of that nature, some money off of, like our gift shop, but it's not enough for operations. And so really getting those sustaining donations that can make us successful long term is what we're aiming for. But it's a long process because a lot of these things there are only a few companies that are even willing to give you a quote for refurbishing things, and they're also busy doing other projects as well, and so it could be quite a process juggling everybody's schedules and availability of money and things of that nature.
I have a question. I am a Wisconsinite. Hello, I saw you guys on Facebook and joined tonight. But at the last time that I was over there at Yerkes, they were talking about possibly having to sell some of the land around the lake. They were concerned about light pollution encroaching. Has that been something that has been dealt with there since I was there just before they closed in 2018?
So it's a continuing concern. So there is just to the west of us and south of us is what was, I believe, George Williams College. That has since closed down and is currently being looked at, plans by a developer to put in a sort of a high-end resort. And so it sounds like they are interested in leaving at least some of the land directly next to us as prairie, natural. But they will, obviously be having buildings and things, parking lots. So we are in close contact with them to educate them on, dark skies and dark sky awareness. It's another project that we're undertaking, trying to get all of the local communities to update their city ordinances. Some of them are not too bad. They do actually at least mention it. But I think all of them could use some updating and education and then, convincing them to actually enforce it. And so it's definitely still a concern. I would say right now, I think this area is still not too bad. It's maybe like a Bortle 4, if you're familiar with that scale. So for a relatively populated area, it's actually doing pretty good. But we obviously want to keep it from deteriorating. So we're hopeful though.
Bortle 4 is better than I thought it would be. So that's great.
Yeah, me too.
That too.
And modern imaging technology and filtering capabilities have really gone a long way to help deal with that. I mean, it doesn't help for optical use, but camera sensitivity and what you can do with light filters is really come a long way.
Yeah. Well, that's something that amazes me. This collection of glass plates, and many of them for the faint objects. Compared to a modern detector, film had a quantum efficiency of effectively, a few percent. And so, for many of these exposures, they're sitting there guiding for hours at a time. In some cases, they would, you know, expose for all night long and then cover it up and then line it up on the star again and re-expose again the next night. And then just seeing the quality of the images, the attention to detail. I've done manual guiding before when I had to, and something failed, but I was tired of that after about 20 minutes, and so
that's how I started.
Yeah, so it's definitely a
5mm camera, some 400 ASA film, and hours at the eyepiece.
Yeah,
and hope you didn't fall asleep and go boom, bump into the telescope.
It begs the question: how long of exposures could you get on that thing, on the big one?
I think at the time there is some discussion in the director's reports and publications about the functioning observatory, where they talk about how the clock drive performed really well. I guess we did find something recently about how it tracked a little bit better on the western side rather than the eastern side. So whether that was just that particular section of the worm was a little bit better made, or balance was slightly better in that orientation, we're not sure. But I think it was really down to the patience of the astronomer. In the 60s, I believe, if you look at the telescope today, there's a new section of equipment that sort of goes around the top half of the telescope, right down there, that has what were at the time modern displays for right ascension and declination, and they also had an auto guider for the first time. So it's electronic auto guider that basically, I think, was a quad cell that would project a guide starlight onto the quad cell, and then depending on the ratio, it's basically photovoltaic panels, and depending on the ratio of voltages between your four quadrants, which direction the star is drifting, and then you run your motor in the opposite direction.
Wow.
So I'm sure that was a huge upgrade at the time.
Rick, Michael Lewis has a question in the chat.
Do you do variable star observations there?
Yeah, we do. Actually, one of the student projects last summer was looking at some very long-term variable stars. They took some modern observations using our 24-inch telescope, and then they went back through the log books for all the glass plates and found observations from 25, 50 years ago to try and redo photometry on those plates and then build up a long-term light curve. So that's certainly one of our interests, is some of these long-term things that you just, there's no other way to get this data than to go back to these plates.
Have y'all got plans to digitize all the plates?
I'm not sure if we'll get all of them digitized. There are certainly some collections, some surveys that were done with glass plates that I would like to see digitized.
I know they were doing that with the Harvard Smithsonian collection, and I don't know where they got to with that. I don't know if they ever finished it, or I know there's got some online catalogs you can go look through now. So.
Yeah. Right now the challenge is, or I guess the phase we're in right now is, University of Chicago still has most of the log books for all the glass plates, and some of them are digitized, and then some of those have then been transcribed to where you can search them, but not all of them yet. And so we've got sort of the first pass at a program that can search these text files, these transcriptions, so you can actually figure out what objects you're looking for. And so that's sort of the phase we're in now. And then we'll probably move towards a campaign. One of our projects this summer, it will probably be looking at, the plates that we know we have and where they're at and see what overlap we have with like the LSST footprint, things of that nature, because we think that's going to be a large source of alerts, you know, flagging thousands of objects per night and, oh, this thing's interesting. Is it just interesting now, or was it interesting 100 years ago too?
Right.
And so I think that's sort of, at least my priority is finding those areas of overlap with current surveys, try and digitize those first.
It just occurred to me, digitizing the logbooks means you've got an OCR handwriting.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, thankfully, handwriting classes were more effective in that time than they maybe are today, or at least my handwriting anyway. But even so, you know, the script is sometimes hard to transcribe, and there's certainly notations that were probably obvious at the time what they meant that sometimes need some deciphering.
Right.
And so we've got a couple of dedicated volunteers that have worked with glass plates through a lot of their career. They're a huge help in doing a lot of that cataloging. But yeah, when you've got 175,000 of them, any project takes a while.
Anyone else have questions?
Well, I got a statement. How about that?
Okay.
We always recognize new members, and you did a bunch of them right before. Brett Johnson joined in the middle of the meeting.
Very good. Very good.
So we
welcome
got
to the welcome
couple
to
outside.
MAS, Brett.
Luke gets a piece of that, right?
Yeah, there he goes. So I also, what school in Kansas did you go to?
So I did my undergrad at Bethel College. It's a small liberal arts college.
You see where I went to.
Yeah.
Ah. All right. Well, Luke, I can't tell you how much we appreciate this. It was really exciting to get to learn more about Yerkes Observatory and the progress that's being made there. I remember years ago when I first heard of it trying to close the University of Chicago, basically trying to get out from under supporting it and maintaining it. And the first people that stepped up to buy it were developers that wanted to tear it all down and make condos out of it or something, you know. So I'm real grateful that didn't happen and that people were able to step up and save it. There are other great observatories around the country that are going to need saving as well before it's all said and done. So technology has moved on, but you know, some of the magnificent engineering that went into that stuff, the clock drive for that thing, you know, when you get down to it, the clock that drives that thing is probably not much bigger than this, at least not the heart of it, right? But the rest of the mechanism, of course, it amplifies that ability to move that thing is it's an engineering marvel, and that kind of engineering I think needs to be preserved for future reference, and to me it's but then I'm an engineer, so to me engineering is art, so I love it. Well, thank you very much, and if we don't have any other questions, I'm gonna wish everyone a good evening, and again, a reminder that next month we'll be meeting at Rhodes College in that room where we normally meet, and since school will still be in session, it'll be a long walk from the parking lot to the meeting place, but it'll be worth it. And look forward to seeing y'all there next month. So thank y'all. Have a good evening, and talk to you later.
Thanks a lot. Bye. Good job.
Great speaking with you all.
Good job.
Good night, everybody.